Good to see everybody on this morning. This is my favorite time of year. It starts to cool off a little bit, and which I tend to enjoy all the seasons. You know, completely unrelated to what I put together. You know that song that Tiffany led? I find His grace is all complete. He supplieth every need. While I sit and learn at Jesus' feet, I am free as free indeed. You know, the thing is we would find that our needs are supplied if we would just slow down and sit down at His feet and learn what He has for us. And we scramble and scratch and try to get everything to work. And all we need to do is just realize that He will supply your need. It's not always everything that you want, but who knows, there's a lot of things that we want that ain't really the best for us. And there's a lot in that song. I found the pleasure I once craved. You know, a lot of people are looking and hunting, getting into all kinds of things because they're looking to fill a hole in them. And there's only one thing that'll fill the hole.
Amen.
And once you fill that hole with Jesus, you find out that what you really thought you were wanting wasn't even what was going to make you happy. We see so many people that they're anxious, they're unhappy, they're dissatisfied, they're upset, they're mad at the world because they're wanting something and they can't find it because they don't even know what it is that they need. Which leads us to, how are they going to know unless we tell them? I don't know how many of you have ever got ready to speak and you have hours of stuff going through your mind. And then about the time you're ready to speak, it just kind of goes off into the, yeah. But I was going to speak on, you know, there's so many things that it can be a good thing or you can take it too far and then it becomes a bad thing. Is it pride or is it self-worth? You know, there's some people that you don't have to convince them they're worth something because they're already pretty sure they know that. And then there's other people that they need to understand that they do have self-worth.
Yes.
And you don't get your self-worth because of who you are. You get your self-worth because God created you.
Yes.
A lot of people will tell you that the original sin was Adam and Eve in the garden, and it wasn't. The original sin was when Satan decided that he was as good or better than God, which is pride. And if you study, you will find out that almost all sins originate back to pride somehow.
Yes.
In Isaiah 14, 12 and 15, which we don't have to turn there, I've got pages and pages. But it's the original sin. It was when Lucifer set himself up against God, and we all know how that went. And I am going to turn to this one, unless someone beats me to it. Proverbs 16, 18 and 19. And we all know this verse. But if I'm not careful, I'll have so much wrote down that when I get to the end, I realize that all I've done is just read the references and have never actually read any of the verses, which Proverbs 16.
Pride goeth before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall.
What,
Better is it to be an humble spirit with the lowly
than to divide the spoil with the proud.
Yeah. You know, there's so many people that try to set themselves up to be something where if they would just wait and let somebody else commend them instead of run, as they say, run around tooting your own horn. Let somebody else do it.
I don't have it.
In Psalms 10 and 4, it is, they're setting themselves up to be a God unto themselves. And how many times do we see people do that? They think that they have all the answers. They think that they are the one to, as they say, well, you need to take care of yourself because nobody else will. So they try to pull everything to themselves. And they think that they're the one that decides what is right and wrong. In Daniel 4:30 through 37, we see that pride will destroy even a king. Someone that has basically the world at their feet. You let them get to thinking that I done this. Look what I have done. Look what I have created. Look what I have. And that's the first step to a downhill slide. The whole story of Pharaoh in Exodus 5 through chapter 14 is, I believe that's right, he kept hardening his heart because he was too proud to admit, I believe it's Exodus 5 through 14. He kept hardening his heart because he was too proud to listen to a shepherd. He was too proud to hear from God. He didn't want to turn loose of his stuff. He had free labor. And there is a lot, there's a bunch to that. And then we see Saul, he lost his kingship due to pride. He couldn't accept that he was anointed to one thing in God, and Samuel was anointed to another thing in God. And just because you're anointed doesn't mean you're anointed to the same things. You all have your positions. Samuel was not greater than Saul, and Saul was not greater than Samuel. But when Saul stepped out of the role that God gave him, because he thought, well, I'm good enough. And the pride ruined him. It stripped it didn't just ruin him, it ruined his entire family. And we see that a lot of times people's pride doesn't just pull them down, it pulls everybody down around them. And I looked up the definition of pride. Excessive self-esteem, conceit, feeling superior to others, a deep satisfaction with one's own achievements, performance, or accomplishments, foolhardiness, and a corrupt or irritational sense of one's own worth or value. And I thought, we all know people that you've heard them go on about themselves so much that, it becomes extremely irritational. And another thing, I had never really thought of this, is pride is self-idolatry. You're setting yourself up as God. Security in one's own ability. A lot of times we think that we've accomplished something. If you're doing it under your own ability, there's a good chance that the foundation ain't set near as good as what you think it is. Placing one's opinion above God's authority, and I had never even actually thought of that, is you're saying that what I think matters more than what God said about the situation. Giving ourselves credit for what God has done for us. And that was, I thought, boy, that sums it up pretty good right there, is we think that we have done it. Now, God gave you the ability, the resources, the aptitude, the talent. And there is, I'll get on down further, but I mean, taking God's glory for ourselves. What He has done for you, you say, look what I have done for me. And it is considered self-worship. However, there is a place for self-value. In Ecclesiastes 3:22, and sometimes it's kind of hard for me to turn pages with one hand because it jumps so far I can't keep up. That's one thing I've found makes it easy with using my Bible app on my phone, is I can do it. I hunt and peck anyway, so this ain't no big deal. Well, I believe I have the wrong verse. I don't know. No, there is a place for knowing your own worth.
Yes.
I have seen that there is nothing better for a man than to enjoy his work, because that is his lot. And of course, my deal kicked over. Candace had promised she was going to give me a different Bible app.
You said you didn't want one.
She didn't have to mention that. But yeah, basically, it's saying there's nothing wrong with doing a good job and enjoying the fact that you did a good job. You know, I've done the same job for 28 years, but I've done it for a couple different people. And there's nothing wrong with realizing that I do a good job.
Right.
And we use pride sometimes a little bit loosely, and it's not really taking pride in your work, but it's wanting to do a good job.
Yes.
And we are called by God to do
Yes.
whatever we do to the best of our
Yes,
ability.
that's right.
And there's nothing wrong with realizing that working through the talents He gave you and applying yourself, that you did a good job. And you know, some people have a hard time realizing that they are worthy of love
Yes.
and belonging
Yes, that's right.
and
Come on.
accepting.
Yeah.
Yes.
We need to learn to accept ourselves for who we are while realizing that we have room for improvement. And that is the thing, is some people, they're quick to accept themselves for who they are, but they don't think they have anything to work on. And then there's other people that will never accept themselves for who they are.
No.
And they think that the improvement they have to make is so large that I can't ever get there from here. And they don't realize that they're worthy of God's love,
Yes.
of others' love, that you belong, and that people would miss you if you weren't there.
Yes.
You know, that's the thing we've seen that here, when people are missing from service, it leaves a hole.
No.
And some people think, well, ain't no big thing, you know, they wouldn't even notice if I wasn't there. Yes, because you belong. Each and every one of you belong here, and we all miss you when you're gone. You know, realizing self-worth leads to less dependence on external validation. When you realize that you are worth something, you're not running around trying to get everybody to pat you on the back. There's bad. We all enjoy being told we did a good job, that you know, whatever it is. We enjoy people let you know that, hey, we noticed. But when you realize that your self-worth doesn't come from other people, you're not craving that validation near as much. And you know, the thing is believing that I'm worthy because God says so, instead of my achievements make me worthy.
Yeah.
You can never do enough to be worthy of His love. You are worthy of His love because He said you are.
Yes.
And confident people are more open to input from others because they're secure and they don't feel threatened by other people's opinions. And we have seen that some people, when you go to try to tell them, you try to talk to them about a situation or tell them something that you think could have been done different, they become very, very upset because they feel that's a threat. Instead of realizing that, hey, I'm doing the best I can, and if you have a better way, go ahead and we'll discuss it. It's kind of going back to my job. I've told the guys that work with me, I've done this for a long time. I do it the best way I know. And if you can come to me with a different option that actually makes sense, I'm not too good to take your opinion. But you need to prove it to me. I'm not just going to take it just willy-nilly. Arrogant people believe they already know everything worth knowing. There's my brother's instructor, and he said, he said, some people come into class, and he said, you can't do them a bit of good because they're already full.
Yeah.
They have no room to take advice or training or education or an opinion because they already know everything. Well, in that case, why did you show up?
Yeah.
If you already know everything there is to know in the Bible, then why do you even go to church? We all have room, no matter how old we are. We've all said over and over that, we're studying something and something jumps out at me. There's been 3 different things that have jumped out at me just in doing this, that I was like, well, I never really thought of that. Pride is saying that you're taking God's glory for yourself. I had never considered that. And we need to understand that we all have room for improvement. And beings, arrogant people feel they already know everything worth knowing. A lot of times they will refuse to accept help from others because I don't need you. I am a sufficient unto myself. And I've talked to my kids about this going to school. A lot of people that seem arrogant, proud, look down on everybody else. A lot of times that comes from insecurity and a need to feel superior or to feel in control. A lot of the people that come off like they have it all together, that is a facade they put up so you can't see how big a holes they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they may be very talented. They may be very skilled. They may be very, very intelligent. But if they don't have the right foundation, it doesn't matter what you put on it. It's never going to hold up. The thing is a lot of times pride and arrogance is a defense mechanism to compensate for inadequacies. We all need to be aware that we have issues that we need to work on. It doesn't matter if you have been a Christian for 2 weeks
70 years.
or 70 years. You still have things you need to work on. Now, granted, we hope that by the time you've been a Christian 70 years, the issues you have to work on should not be as glaring
Right.
as what sometimes you see in a younger Christian. And I found a list of differences between self-worth and pride. Someone that has self-worth is self-aware. You realize that you have things that you need to work on. Someone that is proud, a lot of time is blinded to their own faults. If you are, realize your own self-worth, I guess is how I want to say that, sometimes I get busy writing so fast that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when I go and read it. You're a lot more apt to be open-minded and listen to other people versus thinking you already know everything about every topic. We all know people. It doesn't matter what you bring up. They've done it. They know more about it. They've done it better. And if you're not doing it the way they want it done, then you're just wrong. And a person that is self-confident will have empathy towards others instead of thinking you're the only one that matters. A person with self-worth is quick to show respect because they realize you also have self-worth. A lot of people with pride are very disrespectful to others.
Yes.
Another one, and I hadn't really thought about this either, is a person with self-worth has gratitude for what God has given them because they realize that they didn't earn it on their own. A proud person, no matter what he has, I deserve more. And a person with self-value is approachable because they're not threatened. A person with pride is superior and doesn't care what you have to say about a matter. And pride can be shown in 4 categories. Superiority or better than others, often belittling and lacking kindness. And I had heard this before, but I had to study it out for it to make sense. Someone that is overly timid has too much pride because they are afraid that they won't measure up to what other people have, so they are trying to protect themselves. It's constantly seeking others' approval. And I went around and around, and I didn't go into it real deep, but basically a lot of people are timid because they don't want you to realize they don't measure up, so they just withhold themselves from others. Oversensitivity, a lot of times, is a symptom of pride because you tend to misinterpret others' words or actions and are easily offended. And then, this is what we typically think of as pride. Vanity, showing off achievements, appearance, or abilities simply to gain the praise and approval of others. The thing is as a Christian, we are called to examine our motives for why we do what we do. When Connie and her sisters get up and sing, they want to do a good job. But are they getting up and singing to do a good job, or are they getting up and singing to praise? Why do we do what we do? Do you study and try to write everything out so that way you can do it, so that way you look like you have everything together and you're doing a good job? Or are you doing it so that way people can understand what you're saying? And there's nothing wrong with wanting to do a good job at what you're doing. But the thing is pride can sneak in real easy, undetected as talent or self-confidence. We need to have the willingness to listen and to learn. The more receptive we are to scriptural correction through mentors or peers, the less apt pride can take root.
Yes.
If you realize that no matter how good you think you've done, if you go in the Bible and crack it open, you'll find lots of places that, if nothing else, you need to work on attitude.
Yes.
And if you stay in the Bible, you will realize how much you actually still have left to work on. And the thing is when you are called to lead, you're called to lead as Christ modeled leading. Christ modeled leading through service. Leadership must be rooted in service, not elevating yourself. That's like with the concept of foot washing. There's nothing sacred about the act of foot washing. There is something sacred about humbling yourself. And it used to be that having your feet washed was a sign of someone esteeming you. Now, a lot of times, we'd be more apt to be the one to do the washing than let somebody else wash our feet. But we have seen leaders that they like to stand up and talk about their church, talk about their, what I have learned. And after a little bit, you get to wondering, is this what you learned, or is this what the Spirit taught you? And granted, you study to learn, but it's kind of like they're taking a little bit of glory for themselves. Look how good I am at what I'm doing. And the thing is, when we realize our dependency on God, that we need His guidance for everything we do, and He is our sustainer. As it said over here, I found His grace all complete. He supplied every need. And that right off the bat, when she started that song, and it's like, and He supplied every need. I've sung that song 1,000 times. But having studied this out, it made that phrase jump out. That you will not have an issue with pride if you realize everything you do, everything you have, every talent you've been given has been given to you by God, and that you meet your bills, meet your obligations through what He gives you. We are called to do our end of it and to study. We are called to be gainfully employed if possible. As it says, if you don't work, you don't eat. So you are called to do your end of it. But understand you're doing your end with what He has given you to work with. And I have got to the bottom of my page, and it is exactly on time for once.
Everybody who wants to come. Our piano player is still in the.
Yeah.
We'll let her know we're done in here.
She's not used to Josh being on time.
Well, I should go back through all the other verses I had. We can go about noon.
There you go.